Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of Light Impact. Our guest today is three-time Super Bowl winner, member of the New England Patriots All-Dynasty team, Sacramento State OG, prolific entrepreneur, husband, father, Light Helmets Player Advisory Board member, and my friend, Lonie Paxton. Welcome, Lonnie.
Let's go. Thanks for having me, bud.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you coming in today. I always have fun with you. I think the last time I saw you do a podcast, you were actually snapping a ping pong ball into some beer pong glasses.
Yeah, it's Super Bowl.
Yep.
Yeah, New Orleans.
And there was enough wind at Radio Row where the ping pong ball was a challenge, so you resorted to tossing the ring, which you long snapped perfectly on the first shot right into the glass.
Yeah, it's got a little bit more weight to it. You know, those rings have seen a lot over their years, so, you know, a little bit of water didn't harm it.
Yeah, you know, I think that if you could have planted a camera in those rings, or maybe somebody did, that all the things that every Super Bowl ring has seen could be a show.
So that's actually a good idea that we had thought of when I was at GoPro. We were going to do the Eye of the Cup and like put a GoPro in the Stanley Cup and kind of take it around its journey after the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
Could never get it approved through the NHL deal that I brokered, but at the very least, I thought that'd been a good idea. Yeah,
no, I love that. You know, you got to get like the NASCAR guys when they're going to fight to put the hats on. So when they go and they're screaming at the other guy, that you get a POV of the ass kicking. Yeah. That lasts for about 6 seconds. So, well, so Lonnie and I are in Carlsbad, California at our offices today. So where did you grow up? I think you're a SoCal kid. Fill us in a little bit about, you know, what your family was like, where you lived, what you did as a youngster.
Yeah, just grew up in Corona, California, so about an hour north of here, a little over an hour. Went to Centennial High School. You know, grew up, you know, suburbia life, and, you know, mom was a sheriff's dispatcher, dad worked construction, and I was kind of the man of the house at an early age and had 2 brothers. We adopted a sister. We had multiple foster kids throughout, you know, time growing up. Exchange student from Russia, and you know, just was loving it. And had my dad kind of instilled the passion for sports in me at an early age. And I was always too big to play tackle football, so played a lot of basketball, a lot of flag football, but he had season tickets to the Rams, and so that's kind of where, you know, he would always take me as his +1, and you know, he wasn't a big tailgater, so we'd go in and we'd watch all the kind of, you know, the start of the game, the Frisbee dogs are practicing, the cheerleaders are out there, the bands are out there, and the long snappers and kickers, and so that's, you know, that's where I was just kind of like, wow, that's a pretty cool trait. I always threw the ball really good. I played pitcher, was the quarterback at the, you know, the flag team, and basically just applied that motion upside down, and, you know, that's how kind of that came about.
So you mentioned being too big to play tackle football. So when my son started, like 2017 or 18, there was still a weight limit. It wasn't just by age, and I think they changed that. So you physically couldn't play because you were a big dude.
Well, I could have played, but my parents, you know, I'd have been 9 years old playing with 12, 13-year-olds, and so, you know, there were some kids cutting weight, and my parents were just like, you know, we're not going to have you cut weight at this age. So actually, basketball kind of came my, you know, 1B sport, because I could play that a lot and helped with my conditioning, and you know, really had fun with it. Played until my senior year of high school.
Did you like kill it out of the box? Like, you know, there's the kids that develop into athletes as time passes, and then there's kids that right away you can just tell.
I wouldn't say I killed it out of the box. I mean, that was, you know, growing up in Southern California, you really have action sports that are big, and then team sports, which where I grew up weren't as popular. I mean, everyone would watch, you know, football on Sundays, and when the World Series would come up or the Lakers were in the championship, but, you know, playing them, you kind of weren't the cool kids. It was all the moto, you know, the BMXers, skate, you know, we were a little further from the beach, so it was a lot of the, you know, kind of dirt, you know, dust bunnies out there. And so I got into that, and, you know, riding bikes, and my friends had 4-wheel drive trucks. We'd go off into the hills and do stupid shit. And, and, you know, that was kind of steering me down this, like, you know, path that some of them ended up in jail. Some of them got into a lot of fights. Some of them got in trouble, you know, every day, you know, ditching school, drugs, crime, whatever it may be. And I was teetering on this kind of line of like, okay, well, playing on Sundays or on Saturdays at that time that's what I'd like to do, but it's out of my reach. So my you know, part of my brain and my my kind of mental capacity was getting pulled in this cool guy direction. And so I kind of teetered that line for a long time. And, one of my coaches kind of snapped me out of it and said, hey, you got a real shot to like go to college to play football. Nothing was happening. And then, at the last minute, and then I was real down in the dumps. The last minute, Sac State called and said, hey, we want to invite you up for a trip. And I was like, hell yeah, free trip. Got a plane ticket, rode on the plane by myself, went up, and that's where I ran into John Osterhout, the current coach of American River. He was my teammate. He hosted me on that trip, and they gave us $40 to go out and show me a good time, and it worked. And then I was a Hornet.
That's a great story. What was that trip like? Like, how many kids were there? Did you get in trouble? Like, you hear the stories of player X or player Y. They're like hungover on the day of the actual trip.
Well, that plays a part in the story. So, he took us out. Like I said, very limited cash to take us out, and it's Sacramento, Sac State. We were 1AA, and freshly into the Big Sky. There was no budgets. But he was the man. In the locker room, he was that guy. So he took me to a couple players' house. The offensive line was called the Hammerhead House, and so you walk into the Hammerhead House, and it looks like a scene from, what's that college movie with Booger and Ogre and
Animal House.
Animal House or Revenge of the Nerds, like that type of house. And you walk in, and there's like chicken wings stuck to blankets that were probably a month old, carpet that you would never walk in socks or barefoot in. It always is shoes, and guys laying around just like, scratching their nuts and watching sports. And like, this is college, and then it was like, hey, you're here for this trip. Awesome. So they take me out and, to a gentleman's establishment and probably used 39 of the $40. And I didn't sleep that night. Went to the field. It was a spring practice, and I was in flip-flops, jeans, zero sleep. And, so special teams was happening. And I was like, that's your long snapper? And I wasn't up there to be a snapper. I was up there to play O-line. And they're like, oh, can you long snap? I was like, better than that, dude. Yep. And then I threw the coach in flip-flops, jeans, no sleep. I threw him like 10 heaters, and then he literally stopped practice, had John Volek, the coach. He's, coach, come over and check this out. Hey, do what you just did. Threw him a couple strikes, and he's like, hey, you want to play in the fall? Literally, I left there with a scholarship. So I snapped my freshman year, was like backup O-line, and then the next 3 years I started O-line.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. When you have that kind of story where you just show up, I got to ask, like, everyone now's got a trainer for snapping or long snapping or quarterback coaches. There's, this tight end summit, et cetera, et cetera. Did you have any of that?
I was self-taught up to that point.
Wow.
I mean, I was started long snapping one-handed, but then when I would go watch, the snapper was Mike McDonald for the Rams, played like 15 years. He was doing it two-handed, and I was like, oh, shit, that's how you do it. Okay, you can get a little better velocity, a little better spiral. So I started doing it two-handed, and then, my freshman year, it was like, all right, you're better than that guy, so you do it. And I only raised my hand because that's what I think good teammates and athletes do, is like when coach asks something and you feel like you can do it, you take a shot at it, whether you're going to fail or succeed. I could try. And then that's how kind of my snapping career began. But it was all because I was watching that dude do it. I'd go home, I'd probably broke a few windows throwing with my dad in the backyard, but I kind of developed this, and like I said, I could throw really well, so I just applied that upside down.
Yep.
And continued to do that. It's funny, I was the quarterback of my freshman team for the first 4 games, threw 2 touchdowns, ran for 2, and the center in one of the middle of the game snaps it on 1 when it's supposed to be on 2, and I dove for the fumble, broke his ankle. They moved me to center. I never went back to quarterback. And after the game, my coach, the Harley dude, he was in a wheelchair with a back injury. He's like, "You're never going back to quarterback. You better start lifting weights and keep snapping." So that's kind of how my journey began. And it's been a tool that I feel I always preach that these days. Like, just add it to your toolbox. Play special teams, learn learn to snap, punt, kick, like. Play your positions, but add value in other places, which in football is typically on special teams.
It's funny that every little, opportunity in football seems to have been cracked, right? Like we were talking about before, all these different camps, and then you've got nutrition programs and mental programs and everything else, but special teams is still even to this day at a high school level and community college, JCs, etc., I don't want to say it's ignored, but it's ignored, and it really adds to your balance sheet as a player. So when you left Sac State, right, you walked on. Is that accurate?
Well, so John Osterhout was, we came out the same year, and the scouts really were coming to see him, another lineman, Tim Connolly, and a guy who lives here, Christian Kelly, who was our All-American tight end. Kind of came to see those guys. Christian was dealing with a back injury, so he, did a few workouts, couldn't handle it. So it was just us three really getting looked at. I think we had a kicker or someone, but we'd go through the workout. And Sac State isn't like 100 scouts a practice type of thing. Like when there's a scout there, everybody knows. All right, go look buff by him. Go do your drill really good by him. So when the scouts are there, it's the thing. And so I was my senior year, I used part of my scholarship check to buy a season pass at Sierra Tahoe.
Wow.
So it was 30 minutes away, but the more runs you made on a snowboard or skis, whatever, I snowboarded, the more points you'd get to exchange for food at the end of the day. So my senior year, I was snowboarding quite a bit to feed myself because I was broke as hell. I'd come home, and on my answer machine, the coach would be like, hey, there's a couple scouts going to be here tomorrow for this workout. Bring your football down. We only had one pro football, like circulating all the guys who would use it. And, of course, I'd take it to the barbecues, have a couple pops with the boys, and start trying to hit stop signs or hit the six-pack off the table. It was like the target practice. It was the aim game, we called it. And Johnny O was kind of my good luck charm. So after these workouts, coach would be like, hey, get your ball, show them you can snap. I'd be like, oh, you can long snap? Okay. And they'd gather around.
Yep.
A couple at a time. Mike Tice was there, Steve Mariucci, a couple of the other scouts. And Johnny O's like, hey, let's show them that game. Like, here's 2 to the left. Here's 3 to the upper right. Now give me 5 good ones down the middle. And, like, I was just nailing it. And the scouts would come up and they said, hey, you have an agent? And I was like, no, you know how to get an agent? Like, I had no clue how to get a fucking agent. And so my first agent was a real estate agent. I didn't know how to get a player.
A real estate agent,
yeah,
like a property.
Like property. And so he was mine, and Coach John Volek, his son Billy Volek, who was a quarterback for the Titans and the Chargers, we came out. He was playing at Fresno State at the time. So we had this real estate agent sign our rookie contracts.
Wow.
And day of the draft, I knew nothing was happening. Second day of draft, knew nothing was happening. And, just like Sac State, I kind of took that model. I was like, whoever calls me first, I'm going. Yep. And it was the Patriots who called that day.
Wow.
So luck of the draw.
Now, you mentioned something that you were broke when you were in school. What do you think of all this NIL stuff going on with the kids now? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad?
Both. I would say these guys need to be compensated. Girls need to be compensated. They all have to, they're training. And when I was at Sac State, they said, stay up here for summer and get a summer job. We'll get you a summer job. And it was Mayflower, moving houses and refrigerators and, laundry machines. Like, how am I supposed to train after getting $6 an hour in 110-degree heat, for 12 hours a day and then have to train and play football? So, I think there's a happy medium of, okay, sign these guys to be full year-round athletes so they don't have to worry about bills. They don't have to worry about, a car or, Uber's home to be safe and, things like that nature, but the multi-million-dollar deals, and now it's a competition. Who has the biggest bank statement? Who has the biggest, venture fund to, make Alabama better than LSU or make USC better than – I think that's too much. I think there needs to be regulations on that. But on the kids, the actual student-athlete side, you want them kind of focusing education, sports – and whichever rises, up. Not everyone gets a chance to play. So making money while you're in school and then finishing school, now you're a step ahead of where you used to be.
Sure. We had a quarterback that was working with us, pretty closely. And he would have likely gotten drafted in the first or second round, tore up his hand. You need the disability insurance, great kid. But if he didn't have that, right, or he didn't have the NIL money before, man, you're going from playing on Saturdays, being on ESPN, a game day and everything else, and then you have crickets, and that transition can be tough. Personally, I think, hey, they've got this new judgment that came out where the school's got $20.5 million to pay. You've got the collective, etc. I think the kids should get X dollar amount depending on where they live. So it's more expensive to live at USC than it is at the University of Wisconsin per se, and the rest of that money gets put into some account until you graduate or don't graduate, whatever, and the school grosses it up. another 25% if you graduate to encourage graduation.
Yeah,
something like that.
Some sort of 401k, you know, that they can access after graduation or access after 30 or levels to that. I mean, it went from you can't get a free tattoo like Maurice Claret to now I got private jet deals. You know, like
exactly,
it's come a long way, and I think there's a middle ground that can be supportive of you know, and give these guys a chance not only to make money, but when you know that 0.001% hits you in the face, and you're not the guy or girl in that next phase of sport. You know, do you have entrepreneurship skills? Do you have opportunities to work for great brands? You know, some guys don't love finance. They don't love coaching. Like what's out there in that middle range for them. And so I think that's important to kind of, you know, see it from both lenses. And that's where coming out of, when I came out of college, I developed a really close relationship with Red Bull. And so my first kind of like brand deal, I would say, it was more of a handshake deal. They'd fly me to events. They give me the Red Bull athlete hats, which no one gets. And I learned kind of like a brand lens how valuable athletes are and how access to the locker room is important. So being like a brand representative on one side or ambassador, and then on the inside of the locker room, I have this kind of funnel of cool shit comes my way, whether it's events or other lifestyle brands. You can see how it becomes this conduit to the access and whatnot. So, you know, I advise all these athletes to like learn from that lens, because soon or one day you might be on the other side and you'll have perspective on both.
Sure. You're a dad, you've got kids. What do you think about the one sport athlete versus somebody playing, you know, football, lacrosse, rugby, a whole series of things? What do you think is the way to go for kids?
We're kind of in it right now. You know, every sport wants their athletes by themselves. You know, your basketball coaches say, hey, just if you want to be a good basketball player, you're going to have to drop the other sports. Hey, football, you shouldn't do this in the off season. You should do this. I was always a big advocate of playing basketball in your off seasons, whatever sport that is.
Sure.
Because I just think basketball, it's something you can do forever. It's great conditioning, great hand-eye. You go play pickup games. You can shoot around with your kids. You can do all this stuff. So I played basketball a lot. So I always advocate to my kids, like, hey, you love football, but also let's play basketball in their off seasons. And now they've grown to love basketball. Some guys say that about lacrosse, like play football, then go play lacrosse. Whatever, just stay moving, stay agile, stay flexible, stay competitive. But going all in on one sport, if it doesn't work out for you, now you're kind of left to the wayside. But we see it with a lot of kids, my kids' friends, their parents got them in 6 sports. It's like you're just doing 10% in 5 of them, and then trying to you think they're all 100%. That's not the case.
Yeah,
it's really just like what off seasons align. And then what can your, body hold? I think a lot of the parents do it to babysit.
Exactly.
And it's like, this should be not a babysitter. This should be, something that's improving their mental toughness, their athleticism, their competitiveness, their, how to be a team player. I think all of that stuff is part of it, not just, he doesn't need 2 hours on the screen, put him in this sport.
Right. I think that you hit it on the head. I was actually thinking the babysitting thing where, hey, I'm not going to feel guilty because I'm taking my kids to sports and I'm drinking wine out of my little flask on the side, and then I'm going to run them over to soccer. And, I don't have anything against soccer, but the U.S. has been playing soccer for 70 years and we can't make the World Cup. Like, your kid's not going to make a lot of money playing soccer here. It's just not, at least right now.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it won't happen. Doesn't mean I don't think it's a great sport. But it's babysitting to a point. And then you have all different, like baseball, man, the games are long. You're there for 3 hours, right? Yeah. But all the sports are great, but I like you. I think they should be playing multiple sports. And I think some of these injuries, like we're seeing all these Achilles now and certain injuries because it's just repetition because kids playing one sport.
Yeah.
So now jumping back to where we were in terms of you're going from Sacramento State to the Patriots, like what's that transition like when you walk in the facility? Are you like, holy shit, look at this place? Or?
Well, at that time, we were in old Foxborough Stadium, so it wasn't Gillette Stadium, and that stadium was old, and it was crusty, and they weren't very good. I mean, they came off a little bit of success with Pete Carroll and Bill Parcells and stuff, and Drew Bledsoe was there.
What year?
I came in 2000. Brady, myself, Belichick, and those were like, obviously the three legs of the stool. You just add a long snapper into the Tom and Bill as the three greatest of all time. But no, it was. I mean, we sucked that year. We were 5-11. We ended the year on some like crazy final play of the game against the Dolphins. It was snowing outside, and everyone just knew it's off season. Like, let's just finish this game. But teams calling timeouts and like trying to like score the last play and then throw a bomb. And everyone thinks it's done, and guys run in. Guys were already like literally in the shower, and they had to say, "No, the game's not over. Come out." So guys came out in their towels, and it's like 5 degrees. They're like, "Can we all just go home? Like, season's over, all right? Neither of us are making the playoffs. Let's just finish this." And so I was like, we weren't very good at Sac State. Weren't that good that year. I'm like, is this just the way my football career is going to go? I remember with my girlfriend at the time, we drove across country, so. Just kind of took our time, went across country. And then the next year we had, this is 2001, we had Belichick basically wiped the roster clean. I think the only holdover from 2001 was like 16 players or something.
Wow.
And I was one of them, Tom was one of them. And so he brought in free agents like Mike Vrabel, Larry Izzo, drafted Richard Seymour, Matt Light, and kind of built the roster with good free agents and a good draft class. And that year we had Dick Rabine was our quarterbacks coach. He passed away at training camp, literally like we were in Rhode Island at this school. And, that was like a traumatic moment. And then a couple weeks later, 9/11 happened. And so it's just kind of from the losing year to like the way that started. And then the next week when Bledsoe got hurt, and then, we got to bring in our fourth string quarterback, Tom Brady. No one knew it was going to happen. And then we just started, putting one foot in front of the other and, chipping away at building, camaraderie and rallying around the system and the ethos rather than the one player that we're missing.
You mentioned 9/11 in there. How did that affect you, and what was it like in a locker room?
Well, it was nuts because Joe Andruzzi, our left guard, he had 3 brothers all in the trade center, all firemen, and they got out. His dad was a fire chief, and he had 3 brothers all in uniform that day, all on site. 3 of them went in, and they all got out before it came down. And so obviously we missed the games that week. He's the kind of iconic image you see when they talk about the game because we're playing the Jets.
Sure.
So it's Boston, New York, where the planes came from. And he's running out with 2 flags, number 63 in the game, and his brothers are in uniform in the middle of the field, and I get chills just thinking about it. And so we rallied around him and his family, and obviously the community and the people who lost their lives, and kind of used it. Our name was the Patriots, and it was kind of the year of the Patriot in my mind. So it was kind of a rallying cry, and obviously had to do that as a bigger scale with Drew going down.
The cultural change in the locker room, right? So Belichick's cleans house. Are you guys that's because he did it all at one time, basically, right? So the remaining guys were you guys not really walking on eggshells. Did you feel the cultural change, like the team change? Was it a different urgency? Was it the individuals in the room? Was it how did it feel different to you, where you started to feel like it was something different, but if not special?
Well, I mean, you were walking on eggshells every day. I did it for 10 years in New England. Like, I felt I was getting fired every single day. But that's how he kept it. I mean, he'd call anyone out we would go in after practice and watch hours of film, and then the next day he had kept watching all night. The next day he would find other things in practice that he hated and call you out by name with a laser in front of everyone, so no one could really hide. You know that they're watching film. The scouts are watching film, but when you do it in front of your teammates and peers, it's a whole different effect. But I think he brought in, just the consummate team players, the guys from other organizations that weren't the, $50 million free agents, but they're the grinders. They might have been free agents that made it 4 years with that team, and now they're up for contract. He went and found the Larry Izzos and Mike Vrabels, good position players, good role players that knew how to do their job, what role they had, and they're good locker room guys. And so, with our vets like Lawyer Malloy, Teddy Bruschi, Willie McGinnis, Ty Law, kind of keeping that nucleus down. and then bringing in these free agents to really just they created like a psychology experiment with guys that they believed they needed to stay because they proved they can stay, and then guys who went out in the streets and got that maybe no one else wanted, and we packaged them up and made a dynasty.
Yeah. When did you realize that it was going to be special? When it was that you win a Super Bowl and there's a lot of 1-and-outs. Like I think the '85 Bears are probably one of the better Super Bowl teams, and they couldn't come back and do it. I can remember as a kid, Walter Payton sitting with his hands on his head, the steam coming out, and he knew he was done. And as a Packer fan, it was hard to cheer for Walter, but I love Walter. They couldn't do it again. And when did you realize it was something different? I mean, for you to have 3 rings, for the team to have so many, and I think they came off a loss like in '97 against the Packers in New Orleans.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we didn't make the playoffs in 2000. We moved into Gillette in 2001. We won that year. The following year, we didn't make it at all. We were like 9-7, and still to this day, I bet in Carolina's locker room or in meeting room, he's probably pulling out footage from that 2002 year because he used to talk shit on so many plays, guys' lack of effort, uniform choices. The captains fight for this choice of uniform, and we go out and get our ass kicked in that uniform. And so we're never wearing all blue again, like adamant about that. So it didn't feel that way because you went home again with your tail between your legs, didn't even make the playoffs in 2002.
Sure.
And then 2003 starts with Lawyer Malloy getting traded or cut, and he goes to the Bills in week 1. We brought in Rodney Harrison. We drafted Ty Warren and Vince Wilfork and like some other kind of beef,
Yep.
And I think that's when you're like, okay, we got like a new veteran, Rodney Harrison. You got some new life internally, guys from other programs that just don't give a shit. I mean, he's laying guys out on our own team in practice just to set the tone. Just be like, I don't care. I'm here to do a job, and just come with me or don't.
Yeah.
And so I think, especially coming off of a year where we're not making the playoffs, and then we went, back to back that year, and then we went. We kind of shit the bed against Denver the next year, but then got to the AFC Championship game against the Colts, which was stolen a bit on a few plays, we feel like, and then to that 2007 year, the helmet catch. So we were kind of that 2003 season. You kind of like, okay, we've done this before. We got the playbook. You still got to work hard, got to still put it out there, but we kind of know the format.
How does it go, going from you're playing at Sac State, you get to New England, maybe people know who you are, maybe they don't, but all of a sudden now you win a couple of Super Bowls. Can you go out, or are you got people all over you, or what is that like?
No, where the stadium is in a small town of Foxborough, so you're not really in the city. Guys who lived in the city, they'd get recognized, especially as Tom's winning. I mean, I remember traveling to New York. Tom and I flew on a JetBlue flight down to Florida to go to Miami, and no one really recognized him on the way down. But coming home, because you had people who from Boston, started to recognize him and stuff, and some funny stories on that trip. But Boston's such a great sports town that I'm a bigger fan of the bar owner recognizing me than any fans, because I'd like to get, you get your tab covered, you got a good parking spot, you get a room in the back, like. Even going back to Boston these days, like, I don't go around saying who I am, but the guys I'm with would be like, hey, can we hook Lonie Paxton, oh yeah, come in. You never pay for a beer in Boston again, kid. Come over here. Like, it's the best city to like be a winner in.
Sure. No, that's awesome. And now, I got to ask the Tom Brady question. Like, I was at the SAC Summit with Von Miller, Max Crosby, Darius Robinson's one of our guys. I mean, you got Cam Jordan. I'm trying to think of who else was there. But there's like 60 guys there, and they ask him at the end, like, Mathis was there from the Colts, some of the old school guys, who's the best quarterback you ever played against? And, I'm a football fan like anybody else. And, Brady. All 3 of them said Tom Brady. Like, is he that intense? Is he that focused? And I mean, is he a good bro, like when you're just hanging out?
Yeah, no, he is. I mean, on a different level now, because he can't go anywhere in the world without getting recognized. But in the early days, he worked harder than anyone. really felt like he was kind of a piece of the puzzle, not the entire puzzle. Till the end, I feel like that's the way he treated his teammates and his work ethic and his coaches and all those things. The media is going to spin up what they want to spin up, but the guys who really know him know that he cares about every single player. He juggles a lot, so there might be some players who like, oh, he's changed, or it's different now. Well, of course it is. I mean, look at what's happened to the guy. So you take all that stuff out of it. You get him on a dock in summertime in the sun, just shooting the shit. Same old guy.
Yeah.
His family is, I feel like they're my family. His sisters, we came in 2000, so we were on the same plane from Cali to Rhode Island at the time, and that's when we met. And met his sisters the first game, and one of them lives down here. Married Kevin Youkilis, great Red Sox player.
Yeah.
So we keep in touch as much as we can, and he's a great dad. He's a amazing leader, and I'm proud of just the success he's had, because you saw where it started.
Sure. When you were playing across the ball on the other side of the ball, who were the most notable guys that you were like, man, that guy's intense? Or players that were at a different level, like who stood out in your mind?
Well, it's your typical Ray Lewis, Warren Sapp, John Lynch, Junior Seau, Zach Thomas, Jason Taylor. It's so many. Darrell Russell. I mean, those guys used to run me over. So, I was playing with my head between my legs, and that's when you could put 5 guys on the long snapper and right up the gut, and even put some of those guys on me on like a plus 50 punt. And they're just built different, And so that's one of the things that I felt so blessed to have is like, yes, I had a really stressful job, and a lot of people will say, oh, it's all you did was long snap. And like, well, first thing I'll say is like, well, you can't do it. That's I could, so I was one of 32. But I rode shotgun to some of the greatest athletes of all time, because half the time, when our defense is out there, I'm watching, I'm watching I'm watching Peyton, I'm watching Marvin Harrison, caught the tail end of Jerry Rice, and John Randall, playing against John Randall, guy I watched growing up, and then he's yelling, barking like a dog, over me on a field goal. I was like, oh, this is awesome and scary all at the same time.
That era of football, because the rules started to change, right? And, when you look back, like the passing records of today, you can't compare today to the way it was 15 years ago, 18, 20 years ago, because man, you could mess with the receivers more. You could hit the quarterback in the pocket, out of the pocket. Yeah. You could do anything. Yeah. If you had to say, up until the day that you started transition in the private sector, like, entrepreneurship world, which we'll talk about, who are your biggest influences? I mean, coach, dad, other players?
Well, like I said, in high school, I had my first offensive line coach, who I said he was in a wheelchair. He looked like he did. He drove a Harley to school. He was the teacher of the bad kids, and he had tattoos and wore a bandana real low and a giant beard. But he looked like Lieutenant Dan in a wheelchair. Yeah, and he's the one who kind of took me under his wing. I remember, when offensive linemen run through the chutes to stay low, we didn't have chutes. So he got a broomstick, sat in his wheelchair, and just swung it at you. And if it hit your head, you're too high. Get lower. Ended up befriending him quite a bit. And when I made the league, I'd fly him out and
That's
just
awesome.
give him that experience. I got a great picture of him and Belichick at our Super Bowl in Arizona. So he was one of them. And then when I got to Sac State, my head coach, my position coach, Angus McClure, and Johnny O, and like the Hammerheads, like that group of guys who I still were on a 30-year text thread. It just never ends. And those guys changed my perspective, because I got a college scholarship really like teetering on my love of it, because I was getting pulled the other direction.
Yep.
With the lowriders, the tattoos, the drugs, the girls, the fights, all this stupid shit.
Yep.
But these guys were chicken, beer, workout, repeat, like all the things that are college, and
Sure.
struggling at school, but finding a way, and teaming up and always bonding, and just that was my tribe. Like I found them. So like I'll always feel like they have a piece of my success because they kind of changed me along the way. I was still the Cali kid, still kind of, SoCal and NorCal are completely different. And I brought those kind of vibes up there, but for them. And then obviously my parents and their multiple jobs they've worked, and my mom taking in foster kids and exchange students, and, my cousins when the dad went off the rails, my uncle, and dealing with some family stuff where, people are going to prison and dealing with the court system with my adopted sister, all these things, along with being a dispatcher and hearing some of the gnarliest shit over the air that you have nothing you can do but just listen and work. Yeah. So she's dealing with a lot of stuff today. So, and the grind my dad put himself through just to afford tickets to get me to a game and to be there on the sidelines every chance he got. So there's like pockets, like parents, coaches, my tribe in college. And then as I got to the league, it changes. It's more of a business, but Tom was always there. Teddy Bruschi was always there. I have some other guys along the way. The linemen, I wore a 60s number, so Matt Light, Dan Cope, and Joe Andruzzi were always there, and like they're still there today. So like you kind of have these little influences. And then like in business, like I still have that. When I left the league and I went to GoPro, one of the guys who made me an ambassador at Red Bull, Paul Crandall, worked at GoPro. So like he was like this mentor of mine in the transition.
Sure.
And so, I'm really big on leaning on people. You can't do it yourself. So like you have these kind of this influence, and you don't have to be like them, but you take a little piece of them and you take a little piece of them, and you make it your own. And I still kind of draw on all those relationships today.
What advice would you give to the 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kid rolling into college of, hey, if I could only go back and tell myself something, what would you tell these kids?
I would say, you don't have to be at all the events and all the parties. Like the FOMO is real. You're always going to feel like if you don't go, you don't know.
Yeah.
But if there's an opportunity at these places, whether it's attending a children's hospital event or it's nowadays it's investor meetings, or it's when Light shows up at Sac State, if I can get in that room as a player, I'm going to get in that room just to hear from you, just to let you know my name, and I hear your name and hear the story. I would advise those guys to not just focus on all the cool party events, but try to get outside of that that fear of missing out and put yourself in these community events, these leadership events, because those things you'll really pull on. I mean, the parties will be a funny story forever, but did they add value to your experience other than a hangover or something that you're not proud of?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you'd mentioned you had all these great influences. Not everybody has all these great influences, right? You're a product of the people that you spend the most time with. And, these young kids, a lot of times you show up and it's like, man, it's so easy to get off track. And then one bad thing happens, it leads to another. And can you recover from it? And even if you do, is your performance in that year compromised? What do the coaches think there? And then you mix transfer portal in and all this crazy stuff. So I think that's great advice. How did you manage the transition out of being a multi-Super Bowl winner? You've got this tight locker room of these very focused top performer, Olympic athletes, the best coaching, nutritionists, et cetera, and here's our schedule. We're going to dissect this team. We're going to beat them, and then we're going to move on. I'm going to get, treatment, and then I'm getting ready for next week. All of a sudden, you're like, hey, I'm home. How do you manage that transition? Because I see it all the time. I got buddies at special operations. They struggle to make the transitions. Kids that are playing college football, they get dinged up, and man, what am I going to do now? How did you do it?
Well, I guess indirectly, like unknowingly, I was planning for it. Like I didn't look at the end. I always treated my football career as like, I'm only good as today. I got to continue to get better today, so I'm here tomorrow. Oh my God, I might get fired today if I don't do this. And so just worry about tomorrow. I didn't look at the end of my career. But throughout my time in the league, I offered up to go to multiple charity events, You know, some guys charge money for these things. They'd say, hey, I need 10 grand to show up here, 20 grand to show up there. I'd just go, for the most part, I'd go for a free limo ride and a bar tab, and I'd go be everyone's friend.
Yep.
You know, and through those experiences, I became the guy that you could call when you needed something. And I didn't feel like I was taken advantage of. I felt like it was just another opportunity for me to, you know, be genuine when I meet you, see if I can help you in any way, and then make that relationship. You know, I kept a baseball card binder of every single business card that I got.
Wow.
Because that's the only way I could, you know, follow up with you. So I put, you know, hotel guys, bar guys, brand guys, financial guys, you know, this guy, that guy, and cataloged them like numerically, and just like, oh, okay, I'm going to Vegas. Oh, I met this guy that one time, you know, there are no text messages, so I got to call him.
Yep.
And I'm like, hey, bro, you know, I'm going to be in Vegas. What's up? Oh, yeah, come on down. Just ask for this guy. Cool. And then go and like be fun, be engaging. Don't just be the cool guy in the corner that takes and never gives.
Yeah.
So throughout my career, I was doing this, and growing up in Southern California, I was kind of introduced to brands and lifestyle events, X Games and Warped Tours, and you know how Rockstar and Monster and Red Bull competed. So they always had like these unique kind of variations of selling sugar in a can.
Yep.
But
yep.
It was all about the event and the girls and the athletes and the music. And so I would just go to those things. And through my time, I'm meeting bands, I'm meeting, you know, brand leaders, brand managers, athletes who wear the sticker, and the sticker was really popular. You wear this sticker, I wear that sticker. We go to the same events, but we're completely competitors. We're friends, but we're representing two different things. So I had this kind of upbringing because I'm playing football. They always wanted the football guy around, and we're winning. So now you want the champion around. Yeah. But I went kind of as with a lens of like, oh, what do you do day to day? And like, oh, you get to go to Fiji for 2 weeks to manage a surf contest. Oh, that's pretty damn cool. Oh, you get to you're making movies, and it just kind of like cataloged all these things. And along the way, my transition just I as I'm kind of getting ready, I'm in my 10th, 11th, 12th year. I'm like kind of putting this map together in my head. I should have written it out, but I was more just like thinking of like, okay, who do I know in this world that I want to play in? I don't want to be on TV. I don't want to go sell my friends out on the radio.
Yep.
I don't want to coach because, you know, 75% of them get divorced and yep. move around. But I want to be in this sphere right here. I don't know what it is, but I want to keep in touch with these guys and keep doing this. And then right at that time, that's when GoPro kind of became something. Social media and this little camera that you wear or put in your pocket mixed at the same time as Instagram and Facebook and YouTube were kind of coming alive. And I went to Denver. I had the guys from GoPro out. Like they flew themselves out, but I got them tickets, got them in the locker room and all the things. We started seeding cameras, and I was like, you guys need something in sports. You need to put a camera in a helmet. You need to put a camera in a pylon. The linebacker needs to see what the quarterback's seeing, and vice versa. And same as a pitcher and a catcher. And oh my God, they're like, oh, that's a great idea. We've thought about this, but we don't know anyone in the world who has this access. I'm like, you're kind of looking at them.
Yep.
Don't give me an interview. Just let me come to you and tell you how I can help you.
Sure.
So I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have a resume. I flew myself to San Diego and to NorCal, where headquarters was, and my buddy from Red Bull, Paul Crandall, who's now at GoPro, just got me the meeting. He got me the half hour with the owner, Nick Woodman, got me the half hour with the head of marketing, and we just talked. And It was like, yeah. And so I was already kind of seeing this take place, and my twins were born. So my career, I was put on a couple pounds. Like I've been going into my 13th year. Do I really want to like move my family around or like spend all this time away? I long snap for a couple hours, but I gotta be at the facility for 10. Like I feel like I'm wasting 8 hours a day. So I ended up getting cut. My kids were healthy. I got cut, and I'm sitting at home one day watching opening day, and I see a long snapper breaks his arm, and I was like, oh, here comes the call. And lo and behold, 30 minutes later, my agent's like, hey, you want to go try out for the Redskins? was like, all right, I didn't really want to. I go out there. I didn't really want the job, but I wanted to see what I would think in that moment. And as I'm leaving, there was 5 of us out there. They picked one guy. I'm literally walking in the van, and that's when I called the GoPro guys. I'm like, hey, just give me this opportunity. So they spent a couple months drafting this plan. I'm checking in all the time because I'm not doing nothing. Now that's when my schedule's screwed up. That's when what you're talking about, this transition kind of like disease is happening, drinking and eating, and I got newborns.
It's haunting. You can't turn it off, right?
And like some of the newborn stuff I can't help with. Like, it's just the mom. That's what she does. So I'm taking care of the house and her, but I'm interacting with the kids, obviously, but there's things that moms do. And then December comes around, I get another call, another snapper in San Diego, breaks his leg. My agent calls, literally that same day, a fax machine. That's when you're still using fax machine. Fax comes through of a contract with the Chargers and a contract with GoPro.
Oh, man.
And I'm literally like, I have to make a decision. And so it's this kind of life fork in the road that I had to figure out. And I sat in my garage with my wife and cried and chose GoPro because I saw a couple $100,000 in the league, but then I also saw the off season and moving them and like the kind of the grind of being a free agent and like not having a legit job. And I was in my 13th year. I was like, how much longer can this really go?
Right.
I got to take a step towards business eventually. So, and I've put these guys off. I've been asking for 4 months and they finally say yes. I'm going to tell them no.
Right.
So I had to I'd choose that way. And it was a good choice. It was pre-IPO. They didn't have a job description for me. And they just kind of were like, hey, this is kind of what we want you to go after.
Yeah.
And put together a whole team sports entertainment program. And, it wasn't the sharpest tool in the box, but I had the invaluables that the company was looking for. And it came from all of those experiences leading up to it where I went to the events, I shook the hands, I followed up with the people. And when it got to that point, I had this network that they couldn't fathom how big it was.
Sure.
Because I was always that follow-up guy, always the check-in guy, always the go to the event guy, what made sense, and do things for free guy, and all this stuff. And so, long-winded way of saying, like, this transition was built over time, and that's what I would advise to a lot of these players. It's like it's not always going to look like mine, but don't always have to think of the end in the middle, or spend a bunch of time away from what's paying your bills now.
Yep.
But start these conversations, start road mapping a little bit, start these networking events, and as it kind of takes shape, some of those puzzle pieces may not fit at the time, but you exchange it for something else and mold it to what works for you.
2 quick observations of just listening to you say this. One, like, that's a made for TV moment with both contracts coming through, right? And what's the 99 out of 100 people that play football at any level, football's done with you before you're done with football. You got to make a choice.
Yeah.
Which is huge. The second thing, which I never really thought of before, and we're building a foundation here that helps companies develop a better way of bringing guys in, whether it's from the NFL, special operations. I didn't even think about this until just now, but one of the things that's unique to, let's say, a SEAL team guy that really struggles coming out of the teams, he works with the team guys, but he also is out drinking with the team guys, hanging with the team guys, etc. You had the same thing in football. If you take a guy that's, electronic systems officer on a surface ship, right? He's doing social things with other people, etc. It's a little bit different. So when you come out of something like what you did, and the military is very different than that, and in contrast, like a regular person like me, but like even transitioning out of racing, there was a component of that where I was depressed for a period of time. And man, I used to be good at something or special, where people, around me had the same mentality. But what you hit on is you got to be doing that prep work while you're still in, and that takes some of the shock out of the transition on the way out. And to just validate that, I met you in a bathroom in Las Vegas, which sounds terrible. Cut. We're taking that out, Clayton. So, for anybody listening to this, like, I think we were at the Players Impact, and I was doing a pitch for light helmets in front of a bunch of, folks that potentially were interested in investing against some other great companies. There were 4 or 5 companies there, and I think Tracy, who runs it, or Kristen Kaliga, had said, man, you got to meet my friend Lonnie. He lives over by you as well. And we didn't quite connect. And then I remember being in the bathroom, and I'm like, holy shit, that guy's, even bigger than I am. And we chatted it up. And, then after that, and I'm impressed, with what you accomplished on field, but off field, but also balancing, whenever we talk, it's not, I got this, I did this. It's, I did this with my kids. And that to me is, or like when we share funny stories or pictures or whatever, it's involving kids and family stuff. Yeah. And that's a great component. And my hat's off to you on that, because people get stuck on what they did becomes them versus it's just something that I did, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially like, went to the Derby for 12 years straight with Tom Brady and private jets, and, cops are as our chaperones, and you get paraded around like royalty. And I don't know if I want to live like that. I mean, it feels good for a little bit. I'm not going to lie that, just being recognized in a circle like that feels great. But that stuff ends, and, the sun comes up and the booze dries out, and, and the people you meet and have the funny conversation that's very surface level, they go away. And then, 15 years ago, I had questions of what kind of husband am I going to be? What kind of dad am I going to be? What kind of impact am I going to make after the league? And you don't know, but it shapes itself out along the way. It's like it's this molded kind of statue that just it'll never be done until you're gone. And far from perfect, but I definitely have like a conscience in me that is always like looking for. I lay in bed at night a lot and think about, did I spend enough time with my kids today? Did I follow up that person I said I was going to follow up with? Did I say this one thing wrong that I've tried to say this way? And like have anxiety of that stuff. But you wake up and you're like, okay, back to the drawing board, one foot forward in front of the other, and try to, what you missed yesterday, handle today. And, rinse and repeat. And, like kids make it super fun. And, I'm finding out quickly that it's not lasting forever, because now I got teenagers. The story I was just telling, they were, my son, my twin, boy and girl twins, and two other boys, but the twins, my wife went into labor after the Broncos. When I was on the Broncos, and we beat the Steelers one play, Tebow to Demaryius Thomas, fastest overtime in history. My wife went into labor the next day, and the twins are trying to come out at 23 weeks, which obviously isn't good. And that ended up being my last game, because she got rushed to the hospital. I spent the next 3 nights with her in urgent care, and I had to make a decision whether to go play against the Patriots and Tom Brady. We had Tim Tebow and the Broncos, which I kind of knew how that was going to go, or stay back and get the news that my son's coming out good when he's he's healthy. And so of course I made that decision. Dave Bin, loved that guy, longtime Chargers long snapper, called me and was like, hey, Broncos just called me. Like, is everything good? I was like, yeah, man, I just need you for one game. I don't know if I can go out and do it. And that was my last experience. But, like, that was 13 years ago now. And to see where they're at now and how fast that's gone, it's just become this, like, God, you're hanging on by the seat of your pants. But then all of a sudden, as you know, you're a little older than me, that it doesn't last forever. So just trying to, make that impact now. And hopefully it's a good foundation for them.
No dad in the history of parenting has ever said, man, I just spent way too much time with my kids, ever, right? Every time my kids go to school, I stand in the garage and get choked up every time, right? And it's just that's not a weakness, it's a strength. And I'll take that in I admire you in the way you're managing it all. So now that you're transitioned, what are you doing now?
I'm again, I spent all my career having all these contacts, and so for me, a lot of times I have a hard time saying no to cool opportunities. And that's why I love the Players Impact. With Tracy, is like, this helps provide some guardrails on like financial investments and entrepreneurship, because I always was like, your idea is good, I want to help you. I never really did the research sometimes, and that was partly my fault, because I just believed in the person, not the idea. And a couple times I got burned by it. And so, I love, kind of figuring out these guardrails on the investment side. But, my network is of value to a lot of companies, brands, capital raises, production studios, And then after that network and what I did at GoPro with, helping build a global sports entertainment vertical and athletes and brands and broadcasters and thought leaders around the world, trying to apply everything I learned in the league as an athlete, everything I learned kind of sitting on the brand lens with GoPro and applying them to other startups, other concepts and mentoring athletes who need it, and trying to show my kids that, a lot of good comes out of, keeping good relationships.
100%. And you've been extremely helpful with us. Like, what was the draw to you and this particular product? Like, for me, as football was a life changer for me. I didn't play at anywhere near the level you did. I was just happy to play at a D3 school for a relatively short period of time. In the auto race space, head injury is rare, but when it does happen, it's often a fatality or a life-altering event. When you and I initially talked and you looked at this, what was it that kind of caught your attention that drew you in terms of the product?
Well, I've been kind of dabbling in the brain health space for some time, producing a film about the comeback from brain injuries that kind of tells certain athletes' stories. Not in football, but we interview a few football players.
Sure.
And it's not always about the concussion. It's about steps they've taken to improve brain health or take care of their brain proactively.
Sure.
As well as retroactive or after the injury, things that they're doing, whether it's holistic medicines and breath work and cold therapy and all those things. So I was intrigued by the product itself. Obviously when you pick it up, great name, by the way, it's light. And a lot of times, especially at GoPro, we had a lot of deaths and injuries to athletes who are basically trying to go as big and bad as they could ever do for that one clip that might pay them a couple grand or get that sponsorship. And human flight, they all wear helmets. Moto always wore helmets, F1, NASCAR, everyone. All of our athletes would wear helmets. Even surfers are now wearing helmets. And so I was just intrigued by new age technologies in safety for the brain. And so when I picked it up, there's obviously well, is this as safe because it's not as heavy? But then you start digging into your knowledge about it and the studies that are done of the whiplash effect and the less stress on the neck.
Yep.
And my kid's now playing Pop Warner. I was just and then meeting you in the bathroom in some weird moment. How could I say no? But it came through the Players Impact kind of portal, so I'm all in. And
sure.
And I trust Tracy for having kind of an entrepreneurial eye for other up and coming brands and products, and so and we live next door essentially to each other. So all of those things combined with just a stellar product in a kind of an old school sport that has their the companies that have been around forever. I'm an underdog fan, and now I don't see you as an underdog. I just see you as needing to show off the product, talk to the right people, having ambassadors and people kind of evangelize the why, and it seems to be working really well.
Yeah, and people like you are not only invaluable to the company but to the sport, because it's been such a stagnant space for so long. Like,
right.
Yeah, the slots and vents and shapes on the helmets have changed a little bit, but they really didn't change. And in fact, the concussions in the NFL, they continued to go up until last year when they got rid of the kickoff. Well, obviously the kickoff was, whatever it was, 25-30% of the concussions in the game were related to one type of play.
Right.
In closing, last question. I ask everybody the same question. What do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for someone who was compassionate, always kind of tried to see both sides of a problem, of an issue, which maybe never be good on TV because you got to pick a side. And so I always try to see the good and bad of things and understand the why on both sides, and hopefully, understanding both sides helps my impact be greater.
Sure.
And just have my kids kind of believe that I was trying to do the right thing and trying to give them things that I didn't have, but use my experiences growing up to make it as fun and as impactful as possible for them to do the same thing to their kids.
Now that's good stuff. The dad thing is the most impressive thing about you, but as a entrepreneur and what you did on field, all those things are important, but the fathering aspect, I got a lot of friends from different walks of life. They're all good dads, and you're at the top of the list. I really appreciate you coming and sharing with us today. One day we'll have you come back, and thanks so much. Enjoy the summer, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, let's do it again.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, bro.